I never expected it to hit me like that, like a sucker punch straight to the chest. Just standing in a driveway in the suburbs, staring up at a guy I'd known since I was 13. It was the first day of summer break, and I was crashing at my best friend Nate's house for the week. His mom was out of town on some yoga retreat, so it would be just the two of us, plus his dad, Mr. Walker. Greg Walker. I'd never called him Greg. Not once. He'd always been Mr. Walker. And when I was younger, he'd just been Nate's dad. The guy who grilled hot dogs with a beer in one hand, who coached our little league team even though he worked long hours at his architecture firm. He was background noise, harmless, boring even. But something changed. Maybe it was me, or maybe it was the way he looked that morning when he opened the front door. "Hey, bud," he said, smiling as I stepped onto their porch with my duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He was in joggers and a loose tee, barefoot, his hair still wet from a shower. And I couldn't look away. I mumbled something about being happy to be back, and we both stood there in awkward silence until Nate finally came bounding down the stairs behind him, pulling me into one of his usual bro hugs. The rest of the day was normal. Video games, bad snacks, some plans about which party we'd try to sneak into later that week, but I kept thinking about that moment on the porch. The way Mr. Walker's voice sounded saying my name. The way his shirt clung to his chest. It was stupid, I told myself. A phase. A weird crush. He was a dad. Nate's dad. Still, that night when I heard footsteps past the guest room door and caught a glimpse of him heading down the hall in just sweatpants and no shirt, I found myself holding my breath. I couldn't tell anyone. Not Nate, not anyone, not even myself, really. But something had shifted, and I knew it was going to be impossible to ignore. Especially when the next morning, I walked into the kitchen and he said, "Sleep okay?" and handed me a mug of coffee, the way guys did in movies. The kind where they wake up next to each other. I tried not to read into it, but by then, it was already too late. I thought maybe the feeling would fade, that the nerves would settle once I'd spent more time around Mr. Walker again. See him in dad mode, like I had 100 times before, mowing the lawn or yelling at the cable box. But instead, it got worse. Or more complicated. The next few days fell into a routine. Nate and I slept late, watched movies in the basement, made frozen pizzas at 2 a.m., and spent afternoons by the pool. Mr. Walker worked from home most days, taking calls from his office upstairs or sketching something in that big leather-bound notebook he always carried. Sometimes he'd join us for dinner, sometimes he wouldn't. But every time he entered the room, I felt it. That shift in my chest, like gravity had tilted slightly, and he was the new center. It wasn't even about the way he looked. Okay, that was part of it. He was ridiculously fit for a guy pushing 40, the kind of man who didn't try to look young, but somehow pulled it off anyway. But it was also how he carried himself. Calm, confident, unshakably adult in a way that felt magnetic. Nate didn't notice, thankfully. He was too busy texting Lauren, his on-again, off-again girlfriend, who had a habit of ghosting him every other week. It worked in my favor, gave me space, time to think. To overthink. One evening, after Nate crashed early from too many beers and sun exposure, I found myself alone on the back porch. The pool light glowed faintly in the darkness, and I was nursing a soda, legs tucked under me on the patio chair. Couldn't sleep? Mr. Walker's voice came from behind me. I jumped a little. He laughed softly, stepping outside with a drink in hand, wearing that same worn-out hoodie I'd seen him in before. It hung loose on his frame, sleeves pushed up just enough to show the veins in his forearms. "No," I admitted. "Just not tired, I guess." He nodded and sat in the chair across from me, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of his cologne. Clean, peppery, familiar. I used to get like that at your age. Brain doesn't shut off. Everything feels urgent. "Yeah," I said, not sure what else to say. "That's exactly it." We sat in silence for a few moments. Crickets hummed in the background. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed and a dog barked. He took a sip of his drink and looked at me over the rim of the glass. "You and Nate have been close for a long time." "Yeah," I said again. "Since 6th grade." He smiled. "You're a good influence on him. Steady. Not a lot of teenage boys are." I didn't know how to respond to that. Compliments made me uneasy, especially from him, especially when they sounded like they meant more than they were supposed to. "Thanks," I finally said, voice a little too soft. He leaned back in his chair, stretching his legs out, and his foot bumped mine. Not hard, not intentional. Probably just two people sharing a small space. Probably. "You've grown up a lot," he said after a pause. The words made my chest tighten. My fingers clenched around the soda can, but I forced myself to play it cool. "Yeah, I guess. I remember when you were just this skinny little thing with braces," he said, chuckling. "Now you're, well, not so little anymore." I felt heat rise in my face, unsure if it was from embarrassment or something else. I wanted to disappear into the chair, and at the same time, I wanted to say something. Anything. Instead, I just nodded and looked away, pretending to be fascinated by the pool light's reflection on the water. "I should probably get to bed," I said finally, standing. He nodded slowly. "All right, sleep well." I turned to go, then hesitated. "Night, Mr. Walker." His reply was quiet. "Night, bud." But when I glanced back, he was still watching me. The next day started normal enough. Nate wanted to hit the lake with some friends from school, people I barely knew and didn't feel like pretending to vibe with. I told him I'd pass, just needed a chill day. He didn't push. By noon, the house was quiet again, the sound of his car fading down the street. I grabbed a towel and headed for the backyard. The pool was empty, the water still, sun reflecting off its surface like glass. I kicked off my slides, dropped my shirt on a chair, and slid into the water with a quiet splash. It felt good, cool, weightless. I floated for a while, letting my body drift and my mind wander. About 30 minutes in, I heard the sliding door open. I turned my head just as Mr. Walker stepped out, holding a mug, squinting against the light. He was shirtless again, of course, and in old gray gym shorts that clung to him in all the ways that made my breath catch. His hair was damp, like he'd just come out of the shower. "Taking advantage of the quiet, huh?" he said, setting his mug down and grabbing a towel from the rack. "Yeah," I said, wiping water from my face. "Pool's perfect today." He nodded, stepping closer to the edge. "Mind if I join?" My stomach flipped. "Nah, go for it." He didn't hesitate, just dropped his towel on a chair, took 2 easy steps forward and dove in. When he surfaced a few feet away, he slicked his hair back and looked at me with a grin that made my skin feel too tight. "Still got it," he said, shaking water from his face. We swam for a while. It was easy, natural, like we were just two guys enjoying a sunny afternoon. But every now and then, he'd look at me a second too long, or his hand would brush my arm underwater as we passed each other, and those moments lit something inside me that I didn't know what to do with. Eventually, we climbed out, dripping and breathless. I reached for my towel and started drying off, but when I looked over, he was already using the one I'd brought out. My towel. "Oh, sorry," he said, noticing my pause. "This one yours?" I nodded, trying not to stare at the way it draped over his shoulders, clinging to his chest. "It's fine. I'll grab another." But he held it out to me instead. "Here. I'm mostly dry anyway." I hesitated, and in that tiny pause, something shifted. Our hands brushed as I took it, just barely, but neither of us pulled away immediately. His eyes held mine for half a second longer than they should have. Then he cleared his throat and stepped back. I dried off in silence, my heart hammering. When I turned to head inside, I felt him watching me again. The rest of the afternoon blurred by. I played it cool. Or tried to. Nate got back, blaring music and full of stories about who said what at the lake. We ordered pizza, watched a dumb movie, and crashed late. But through all of it, I couldn't stop thinking about that look, that brush of skin, the way his voice dropped when he said, "Here." Later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my skin still warm from the sun, but my chest cold with confusion. What the hell was happening? And why did I want it to keep happening? The next day felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I went through the motions, woke up late, scrolled through my phone, Pretended I didn't feel that tug in my chest every time I thought about what happened by the pool. Nate had gone out again, some group hang with his cousin and a few people from summer school. I begged off with the excuse of not feeling social. He didn't push. He was used to my moods. He didn't know the real reason I wanted to be alone. Or not alone exactly. By mid-afternoon, I was in the kitchen making a sandwich when Mr. Walker walked in. He was on the phone, AirPods in, nodding along to whoever was talking. He gave me a small smile as he headed to the fridge, then mouthed, "One sec," as he grabbed a bottle of water and stepped into the hall. I should have left. Taken my sandwich upstairs, stayed out of the way. Instead, I sat at the counter and waited. He came back a few minutes later, no phone this time. "Work call," he said, like an apology. "Project deadline." "All good," I said, trying to sound casual. He leaned against the counter across from me, taking a long sip of water. "So, quiet day?" I nodded, just catching up on laziness. That got a small laugh out of him. He looked tired. The kind of tired you don't notice until you're close enough to see the lines around someone's eyes. "I envy that," he said. "A day where I don't have to do anything. Sounds like heaven right now." "You could take a break," I offered. "Call it a mental health day." He raised an eyebrow. "That what you kids call skipping work now?" I smiled. "Only when it sounds better than, I need to not be around people today." His eyes flicked to mine at that, lingering for a beat. "You okay?" he asked. I wasn't expecting the question. It caught me off guard, and I faltered. "Yeah, I'm fine." He didn't look away. "You sure?" Something in his voice made my stomach twist. Concern? Curiosity? More? I think too much, I said finally, pushing crumbs around my plate with a finger. "That's all." Mr. Walker nodded slowly, like he understood more than he let on. "Thinking too much can be dangerous," he said. "Gets you tangled up." He walked around the island, closer now. My pulse jumped. I could smell his cologne again, that mix of cedar and something warm I couldn't name. You ever feel like, I don't know, you're not supposed to be thinking about something, but you can't stop? I asked, voice low. He looked at me, serious now. "Yeah," he said. "I do." I held his gaze. The silence stretched. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something else. But then Nate's car pulled into the driveway, music thumping from the open windows. Just like that, the spell broke. Mr. Walker stepped back, cleared his throat. "I should check on something upstairs," he said. "Yeah," I said, standing quickly. "I'm gonna go too." We went our separate ways, the sound of Nate's voice already echoing through the house. But the silence from before clung to me for the rest of the night, the words unsaid. The moment paused. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in the kitchen, the way Mr. Walker looked at me. Not like I was a kid, not like I was Nate's friend, but like he saw me, really saw me. And then there was the way he'd stepped back when Nate got home, like we were doing something we shouldn't be. I tossed and turned, kicked the covers off, pulled them back up. Around midnight, I gave up. The house was dark, quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of wood settling. I padded down the stairs barefoot, wearing nothing but gym shorts and a tank top. I wasn't sure where I was going. Maybe the kitchen for water. Maybe the living room just to sit and breathe. But when I passed the den, I saw a light on. The door was cracked, the soft glow of a lamp spilling out. I hesitated, heart already picking up speed. Then I knocked, gently. "Yeah?" came the voice. I pushed the door open. Mr. Walker was sitting on the couch in sweats, a book in his lap, glasses perched low on his nose. He looked surprised to see me, but not annoyed. "Couldn't sleep," I said. He set the book aside. Join the club. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Mind if I? He gestured to the other end of the couch. Go ahead. I sat down, keeping a careful distance. The quiet settled around us like a blanket. After a moment, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Thinking again? He asked. Always. He leaned his head back against the couch, looking up at the ceiling. You want to talk about it? I hesitated. No, I said softly. But I want to stop pretending it's not there. He turned his head slowly toward me. What do you mean? I looked at him. Really looked. And I swear, I could feel the electricity in the air between us. I mean this, I said, barely above a whisper. Whatever's been happening. His jaw tightened just a little. Not angry, not panicked, just bracing for something. I don't know what it is, I continued. I don't even know if it's real or if I'm just reading into things, but I can't stop thinking about it. About you. He didn't move. I couldn't read his face, and it scared the hell out of me. Then, slowly, he sat forward, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped. You're not imagining it, he said quietly. I've been thinking about it too. I felt my breath catch. I shouldn't be, he added. You're Nate's friend. I'm not a kid, I interrupted. No, you're not. We stared at each other. It was like the silence itself was daring us to move. Then he shifted closer, just a few inches, enough to make my skin prickle, my pulse jump. If I were someone else, he said, his voice barely audible now, I'd lean in and kiss you. What if I wanted that? I asked. He looked at me, eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Then I'd have to figure out how not to. But he didn't pull away, and I didn't either. The moment stretched between us, taut, fragile, undeniable. Then, just as he exhaled, just as I felt the space between us start to collapse, a floorboard creaked upstairs. We both froze. Then came the sound of a toilet flushing, a door creaking open. Mr. Walker stood, not looking at me. You should go back to bed, he said quietly. I nodded, heart pounding in my ears. Good night, I said. Good night. I stepped out of the den, back into the dark hallway, feeling like something huge had just started and then stopped. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. I came downstairs, half expecting the kitchen to be empty, but Mr. Walker was already there, dressed, making coffee. The window above the sink glowed with early light, and for a second, everything looked painfully normal. He looked up when I entered, but there was a hesitation in his eyes, a shadow of last night's almost. Morning, he said. Morning. Nate barreled in a few minutes later, his usual chaotic self, asking about breakfast, joking about how late we'd all slept, completely oblivious. I played along, smiling at the right moments, throwing in a sarcastic comment here or there, but inside, I was buzzing. Mr. Walker kept his distance. Nothing overt, just a slight stiffness in the way he moved around me. I caught him looking once, just once, and it was enough to make my throat go dry. The day dragged. Nate wanted to drive into town, pick up some stuff for his car, maybe grab lunch. I said I'd stay behind and catch up on some reading, needing a breather. He didn't question it. By early afternoon, the house was quiet again. I was in the guest room pretending to scroll through my phone when there was a knock. Mr. Walker. Hey, he said. Can I? Yeah, I said, already sitting up straighter. He stepped inside, closed the door softly behind him. He didn't say anything for a second, just stood there like he was still deciding whether to be here at all. Then he said, "We need to talk." I nodded. I shouldn't have said what I said last night. He began, but I cut him off. Do you regret it? He looked at me, then sat down in the chair across from the bed. No, he said, but I'm not supposed to want this. Want you. I swallowed hard. But you do. He didn't answer immediately. Then, with a kind of resigned honesty, he said, Yes, I do. The air between us thickened. I could hear my own heartbeat. "This thing, whatever it is," he said slowly, "it's dangerous. Nate can't know. And I don't even know what it means. I'm not someone who does this." "Neither am I whispered. Silence. He looked at me like he was trying to memorize something, my face maybe, or the exact way I was looking at him. Then he stood. "I'm not saying we do anything," he said. I needed you to know it's not in your head." Before he turned to leave, I got up too. Closed the space between us. "I don't want to do anything stupid," I said, my voice shaking. "But I don't want to pretend nothing's happening either." He stood there, just inches away, eyes flicking from my lips to my eyes. We didn't touch, didn't say another word, but when he walked out, I sat back on the bed, breathless, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break free, because now I knew he wanted me too, and I didn't know where it would go, but it was real. The last night crept in differently. It wasn't dramatic. No thunderstorm, no arguments, no sudden confessions, just stillness, a kind of fragile quiet that stretched through the house like it knew something was ending. Nate was gone again, off at some bonfire with Lauren and a bunch of mutuals I barely knew. He'd asked one more time if I was coming, and when I shook my head, he shrugged, said, "Your loss," and left. Just like that. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I felt it. That odd tension I'd come to associate with being alone in the house with Mr. Walker. Not dangerous tension, just charged, like the space between us held more than either of us could carry if it ever fully closed. I spent the next hour pacing between the guest room and the living room, trying to pretend I wasn't waiting for something. I played a song on my phone but didn't hear a second of it. I thought about texting a friend, but no one I could text would understand what I was feeling. Eventually, I ended up on the back deck. The air was cooler than it had been all week, with just enough breeze to make the trees rustle. I sat in one of the weathered wooden chairs. The lake spread out before me like a mirror, perfectly still and too dark to see clearly. The sky was a mix of navy and purple, stars beginning to show themselves. I didn't hear the sliding door open, but I felt him. He stood beside me for a second before quietly lowering himself into the chair next to mine. We didn't speak. I didn't look over, but I knew it was him. I knew by the scent of his cologne, by the way he exhaled slowly, like he was carrying something he didn't know how to set down. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time was weird around him. "You leave tomorrow," he finally said, voice so soft I almost thought I imagined it. I nodded. "Yeah." It should have felt like closure, but it didn't. It felt like a warning. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, looking out at the water. "This week has been hard, and good, and confusing as hell." I said nothing. I couldn't trust my voice not to crack. "I've never done anything like this," he continued. "Never let myself think this way about someone like you." "Someone like me?" I asked, finally turning to look at him. He glanced at me then, and in the dim light I saw the truth in his eyes. Young, close, not off limits, but not exactly allowed either. I felt a lump form in my throat. "You're Nate's friend," he added. "That alone should have been a wall." "But it wasn't," I whispered. He shook his head. "No, it wasn't." The silence that followed was thick, but not uncomfortable. We sat there, two people tangled in a web we hadn't meant to step into, trying to figure out how to walk away without tearing something important. "I've been thinking about it every night," I said. "Not just the moment in the kitchen, or the porch, or the pool. The whole thing. You." He didn't react right away. Just nodded slowly, like every word was something he'd already felt too. "I keep asking myself what it means," he said. "If it's just confusion, or timing, or if you're just exactly what I didn't know I needed." His voice cracked a little on that last line, and I looked away, Not because I was ashamed, but because it hurt in a beautiful, unbearable kind of way. "So what do we do?" I asked, voice barely there. He looked at me then, really looked. "We don't do anything. Not now, maybe not ever, because whatever this is, it doesn't belong in the light. Not yet." It should have broken me, but it didn't, because in that moment, I knew he wasn't pushing me away. He wasn't pretending it didn't happen. He was holding it gently, with the same fear and longing I felt. He was just choosing to be careful, choosing not to burn the bridge between us, even if it meant standing on either side of it for now. "I'll remember this," he said. "I'll remember you." My throat tightened. "I don't want to forget." "You won't," he said. "Neither will I." We didn't hug, we didn't touch, we didn't need to. The moment had already written itself into both of us. When I finally stood to leave, I looked back one last time. He was still sitting there, staring out at the lake like he was afraid to move and wake up. I went inside, climbed into bed, and for the first time all week, I cried. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I'd felt something real. And somehow, that was enough.